On one of the worst plays of the Texas A&M Missouri game, I think I actually have to defend Eli Drinkwitz.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, and thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network now the number one sports podcast network out there. And by the way, on this program, I got to wonder, what exactly is Dennis Gates getting out of all of this injury secrecy? What is the point exactly? By the way, the Texas A&M Aggies, according to Caden Green, were calling out a lot of Missouri's plays and checks at the line of scrimmage. Not exactly a great sign there. I do want to say before I start the program, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. And I have to say this, of course, I've had a lot of criticisms for the Missouri coaching staff in the wake of Missouri's blowout loss to Texas A&M, but I got to say, one of the worst plays of the game, of course, the 48-yard gain by the Aggies on a faked punt. Well, that was clearly one of my least favorite moments of the entire game, but I have to say, after the game, Eli Drinkwitz's explanation about why Missouri gave up such a massive chunk of yardage in that moment, I got to be honest, it did make a lot of logical sense to me. And I laid out all the reasons why that I thought the Tigers shouldn't have gone into a max return, as Eli would have said. Just generally speaking, if I'm a special teams coach, my number one goal is simply to get the ball back for my offense. And for my defense in a way, too, which has just expended a lot of energy and effort getting a stop. The last thing I want to do is screw that up in terms of special teams and let the offense of the opposition back onto the field. So in general, I'll criticize that. And maybe the formation that Missouri had in that spot, maybe that tipped off Texas A&M to that, hey, this is the spot where, hey, it's going to be an easy gain here and a first down if we fake it. You want to criticize that? Fine. I'll just say that I do understand Drinkwitz's logic here, which was basically this. He was saying, hey, our offense has done nothing all day, so we put in basically a little bit more of a risky punt return there. A little bit more of an exotic punt return, which left Missouri, especially on the right side there for Texas A&M, vulnerable to a fake. So to me, that was a gamble, and certainly a gamble that did not pay off, to say the least. But on a day where your offense has done absolutely nothing all day up until that point, the idea that, well, you know what, we're going to take a chance here and just hope that Texas A&M doesn't have a fake on, actually, that makes a ton of logical sense to me, because at a certain point, you got to take a chance. And maybe that was the wrong chance to take. We can argue about the specifics of that, but just to the idea that Missouri needed to take some type of chance here to get something going. You're already down multiple possessions. Your offense has scored 0 points on the game. I got to say, the more I think about that and looked at Eli's explanation there, yeah, it was a bad play and a horrible result for Missouri, but to the idea that, hey, we need to try something here on special teams because our offense is doing nothing, hard for me to argue with that logic. Now, in terms of disappointment, I'm disappointed after the Texas A&M game, and I know a lot of Missouri fans are too. But I think context is really important here, because perhaps Missouri fans, including myself, although I did pick the Aggies to win the ball game, maybe we should have been all a little bit more realistic, because I was watching College Game Day, and the host Reese Davis said that true freshmen in the SEC making their very first start in the conference, well, they're now 0-18, including Matt Zollers in his start against Texas A&M. And also Zollers apparently hurt his hand in the ball game. He was bleeding and on his throwing hand at one point. So none of this should really be a surprise at all, how that played out. I will say, these last 3 games, though, they're going to tell us a lot about Matt Zollers' standing into next season, I think, at least, and into this offseason, and whether Missouri needs another quarterback in the portal or not. Of course, Sam Horn, Bo Prabula, their status, all of this is going to come into play here. And also, frankly, how Missouri, see, people acting like the season is over now because Missouri is eliminated from SEC title contention, essentially eliminated, not officially and mathematically, but for all intents and purposes, of course, Missouri is eliminated from college football playoff contention here. So a lot of people are saying, well, the season's over. None of this matters. I disagree with that. You look at what Missouri did after losing to South Carolina last year, beating Arkansas, beating Oklahoma at home. To me, that, and also, of course, beating Iowa, getting to 10 wins there in the bowl game, that made a big difference for 2025, how Missouri ended 2024. Did it not? For example, does Missouri get Damon Wilson, who's been an outstanding pass rusher from Georgia? Does Missouri get Damon Wilson last year if instead of winning out those last 3 games, they lose out those final 3 ball games? And I'll tell you this, Missouri, of course, is traveling to Norman for the first time in many years here. Missouri has not won in Norman since 1966. I don't know how much that particular drought means to Damon Wilson, for example, a guy who's been here for a few months at this point. But it means something to me. It means something to a lot of Missouri fans. And if I am Damon Wilson, by the way, it's the men sitting next to me in that locker room who mean something to me. And as a coach, if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, if I'm able to cultivate that, if I'm able to make this locker room still care down the stretch here, just like they did at the end of last season, well, you've really done something there. And that's a tremendous amount of credit is deserved to Eli Drinkwitz. And really, based on how his program has performed at Missouri, I expect nothing less here to finish out the season for the Tigers. So one thing Missouri offensive tackle Caden Green said after the A&M game was that some of the Aggies were basically calling out some of Missouri's plays and really, probably more specifically, some of their checks at the line of scrimmage. In other words, if Missouri was going to run right, they decided to flip it to the left. Well, Texas A&M seemingly was on to those particular type of checks at the line of scrimmage. And I have to say, as we go on here throughout college football, of course, as an offense, if you find yourself in a bad play, obviously, in theory at least, it's a huge advantage if you have a good quarterback who can get you into a better play. But of course, then the defense has an opportunity to change its play as well, its coverages. If it's in a blitz, well, maybe let's back out of that blitz since they now see it coming. The point here is, for all of the advanced statistics that you see in college football these days, broken up into various different situations, this, that, and the other, one thing I'd like to see broken down, not just in the big picture of college football, but team specific with Missouri as well. I'd like to see average yards per play, EPA, how affect your success rate, that kind of thing, on your original call versus your checked call. In other words, hey, if we just snap the ball, run the original play, what's our expectation here? How effective is that versus, well, when we actually change the play, look to the sidelines, is that actually more effective? Is it less effective? I'd frankly love to know, because I guarantee you it's not the same for every team throughout college football. You know, another thing Missouri's offense has to do is get Kevin Coleman going against their best opponents, because Coleman has been virtually invisible against Texas A&M and Alabama, for example, Missouri's, well, 2 biggest home games so far. And that was not the case at all against some of the big-time opponents for Mississippi State in the SEC last year. So let's get into that. And also, I got a ton of basketball to get to still on this episode as well. First, though, I want to tell you about Game Time because, of course, well, college football is not only back, it's actually winding down. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, well, there's nothing quite like it. And we've only got one more shot to see our Missouri Tigers. And you know what? As much fun as college football is, of course, finding the tickets, not always so fun. That's why I use Game Time. And I pulled up Game Time, by the way. You see amazing deals, and I'm talking about the cheapest prices you can possibly have. And I love the zone deals. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save a boatload of cash. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So Kevin Coleman has obviously had some huge games for Missouri this season. The Kansas game in particular, he was incredibly clutch with a fourth down catch in particular as part of his 10 catches for 126 yards that, well, kind of Missouri needed that one in the Kansas ball game. But against Alabama, just one catch for 2 yards. Against Texas A&M, just one catch for 1 yard. So 2 catches for 3 yards. And again, while Coleman has certainly had some big moments this year, surprisingly invisible in some games as well. And I have to say, similar to Luther Burden III a little bit last year, another slot receiver that Missouri, for whatever reason, could not seem to get the football as frequently as they clearly would have liked to. One of your best playmakers, you're not getting him the football. I mean, unless the defense is concentrating so much on him and you're then able to get the ball to the outside, well, something's wrong there. I think actually what you're seeing is Missouri's refusal to throw the ball over the middle of the field. At times, Brian Smith agreed with me, by the way, the scout master yesterday, so it's not just me making this up. But that's got to affect your inside slot receivers quite a bit, too. It just affects the type of routes and things that they can do. When's the last time you saw Kevin Coleman or Luther Burden over the last couple of years go for a 15, 20-yard post? Just something as relatively simple as that. And you look at, again, for Mississippi State last year, another SEC program, against Georgia, for example, Coleman had 8 catches for 103 yards. Against A&M last year, 8 for 89. He had 6 for 58 against Mizzou, 6 for 118 against Ole Miss, and 6 for 57 against number 1 Texas at the time. So those were all top 25 teams that I just listed off there, and Coleman was very productive in those games last season. So while it's not all specifically about Coleman, of course, to me, that's a pretty obvious symptom of an offense that is just not clicking right now. And you know what? When it comes to Missouri basketball, as you can probably tell, I'm getting a little bit tired of the confusing messaging coming out of Dennis Gates and his program. For example, well, Sean Phillips was a guy who I pointed out in the SEMO game on Friday night did not finish the game, but then I thought, wait a second, did I maybe miss something here? Was that an injury? He did take a fairly hard fall at one point, it looked like. I thought maybe Phillips is hurt. But then we saw Sunday, okay, Phillips is out. He's in street clothes, but with an illness, as Missouri said. But also that Dennis Gates said, hey, Phillips wanted to play but was held out. Okay. Again, is it an illness? Is it an injury? I'm not really sure what's happening here. And even more specifically, and more importantly, I would say, the injury secrecy with Annor Boateng and Trent Pierce. To what end? What is the point of all of this stuff? To me, it just creates completely unnecessary speculation and angst amongst your fan base. And I've noticed some Missouri fans online have compared this to the Isaiah Mosley situation from a few years ago. I wouldn't go that far just because, well, the Mosley situation was not injury related. That was a personal matter of some sort. But I do see one obvious parallel, certainly like the Mosley situation. A vacuum of information, as I've said many times, creates speculation and angst. So, again, what is the point of this? How is this a win for Dennis Gates and his program? Importantly, by the way, NBA teams do not do this. You take LeBron James, for example, the most famous basketball player, possibly even the most famous athlete in the entire world. Well, he's missed the first 11 games of the Lakers season, not because of an upper body injury. No, he's missing it because of sciatica. Yes, not an upper body injury, not even a back injury. They even got so specific to tell us that it's a sciatica injury. Again, this is about the most famous athlete or even person, maybe outside of Donald Trump, in the entire world. So why can we know what's happening with LeBron, but we can't know what's happening with Annor Boateng? Again, let's say he twisted an ankle. Just tell us that. Maybe he's going to be out a week or two. Just tell us that. If it's a knee sprain, if it's a hamstring, whatever it is, by all means, just let us know. Even the Lakers are telling us that, hey, LeBron's going to be reevaluated in a week or two, and he's resuming basketball activities. Meanwhile, Missouri fans, Missouri media, well, we get nothing. So I'm left to, in warm-ups, look at Annor Boateng's foot, looking for a walking boot and his gait and all of this kind of stuff. Just tell me, coach. It's not going to change anything. He's either going to play or he's not. So the secrecy here, somebody tell me what the point is, because I don't get it. And I mentioned the Friday night a ball game against Southeast Missouri that was obviously too close for comfort, but I'll say even against VMI, that was a little bit too close for comfort at times. In the first half, allowed, well, one player, actually, you know what? Yes, allowed TJ Johnson for VMI to score 21 points in the first half, for example. I just got to say, if you're a big-time scorer in the SEC this season, you're probably going to love playing Missouri once again. Definitely better effort, I thought, defensively, just with closeouts in the second half, quite simply. That definitely made a difference, and it was good to see Missouri pull away without a doubt. One thing, though, I will say, just here's a pet peeve. I've noticed that one thing Eli Drinkwitz likes to say about his wide receivers is, hey, no block, no rock. In other words, hey, you're a wide receiver. Your job is obviously to get open and catch the ball. But if you're not blocking on run plays, well, you're not going to play. That's how I'm starting to feel about guards and boxing out, by the way. I realize as a guard, you're not used to rebounding being a huge priority for you. But I'm just telling you, in this day and age of three-point shots being attempted all the time, well, what does that equal? That equals more long rebounds. So guards, the idea that you can just sort of watch and stand around and not put a body on anybody and just go, hey, big guys, go ahead and clean up the glass there, that doesn't work anymore. And again, when everybody's playing 5 out, 4 out, that type of thing, you may only have one big guy near the basket when the shot goes up. So it can't just be the center and the power forward trying to get the rebound. Point guards, guess what? Get in the action. No box out, no minutes. It doesn't rhyme, but that's as close as I'm going to get. I will say I thought Missouri's Luke Northweather played a good game, and I'll talk more about Luke coming up here in a bit. And a couple Missouri freshmen, including one with one of the most spectacular first baskets you're ever going to see for a Missouri player, and another Missouri freshman who very much looks like he is on his way to a red shirt this season. So let's talk about all that in just a bit. But first, of course, the NBA is back in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you missed the opening tip or you just want to ride a hot hand, well, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. It really does keep every game exciting. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen of the day. And thanks again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. By the way, Anthony Robinson, another positive, shot the ball very, very well in Missouri's previous game. Again, with Anthony, if he's just more consistent, I think he can be one of the absolute best players in the SEC. That's what he needs, though. Got to stay on the court more with fouls and just a little bit more consistent offensively as well. Be nice to see Luke Northweather consistently get on the boards like he did for Missouri. 9 rebounds, a nice game for Northweather. I will say this, it just seems like he and Javon Porter and also Jacob Cruz, to me, those are 3 guys, if they're ever going to have to be in pick and roll action, those are going to be guys you're going to hunt defensively. So if Northweather or Porter, for that matter, can actually play the 5, I think that's a really big deal for Missouri. Northweather was able to pull it off. Certainly on Sunday, in the SEC, that's more of an open question. I do like his offensive upside at the very, very least, for sure, that of Luke Northweather. Also, what a first basket of Nicholas Randall's young Missouri career. Gets an alley-oop, reverse dunks it, and gets the and one against VMI for quite the exclamation point there. Randall, an interesting piece, a guy who's a taller player, I think has a little bit of a jump shot, and I don't know, a great attitude according to the coaching staff. So we'll see what happens there. As for Columbia's Aaron Rowe, though, the former Tolton product, since he did not play in this ball game, Nicholas Randall got 6 minutes. Aaron Rowe didn't play at all in a game. Missouri scores 106 points, wins 106-68. If he's not going to play here, I'm not so sure he's going to be playing in any other ball games this year either. So going to be interesting to see if Aaron Rowe indeed takes a red shirt in his first season in Columbia. And finally, going back to Friday and the Southeast Missouri State game, where, by the way, Missouri shot 63% from the first half and was still somehow trailing by 5 points. So, yes, the defense left a lot to be desired, to say the least. And speaking of the end of the first half, well, that very final possession by SEMO was the one where on social media I said it broke my brain. Well, what I was basically pointing out is that this is the type of possession that, to me, encapsulates what is wrong with Missouri's defense and has been for at least 2 or 3 seasons now. And that is Missouri, there's basically a guy is going one-on-one, dribbling out the clock. SEMO wants to take the last shot of the half quite clearly with the lead here. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, Missouri sends a double team while the ball handler is just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. There is virtually no time left on the clock. Again, SEMO's not necessarily trying to get the best shot here. They just want to get the last shot. So to me, play good, solid one-on-one defense and make him make a contested 23-footer over your arms. And if he makes it, great. Give him 2 thumbs up and go to the locker room. But to run a blitz at this guy, when, again, he's sitting there, he can see it coming from a mile away. He's 25 feet away from the basket. I just didn't understand what we were doing there. To me, just Missouri, they overhelp, they overdouble, they foul too much at the expense of simply just playing good defense and making the offensive player, making the opposition make a good shot. Force them to make something happen. You don't have to get a turnover on every possession for it to be a good defensive possession. That's just how I feel about this Missouri defense anyway. And fortunately, Missouri definitely played better defense in the second half on Sunday, but I'm just not seeing a lot of evidence that that's going to be a strong side of the basketball for Missouri this season. Hopefully, maybe on Wednesday against Minnesota, a high major type of team, maybe we'll see something a little better, but just call me a major skeptic on Missouri and their defense for now. But hey, thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou, and you know what? I will see you all on Wednesday. We'll talk about that Minnesota ball game and, of course, all the football topics you can get to as well. And until then, I'm John Miller. Thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.